So maybe you're new to bass fishing. Maybe you have a new lure that you're not sure what rod to throw it on, bait casting or spinning. So if you have questions on this, I've come up with a list of guidelines that I think may help you. So let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dishes and Fishes, where I show you how to cook and set hooks. Check out my TikTok for quick 1-minute tips on bass fishing and cooking, as well as my Instagram for daily and weekly updates. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you're into either fishing or cooking. In today's episode, we're talking about spinning and bait casting equipment and when to use each. So let's get into it. Quick disclaimer here, there was a time when I first started bass fishing where I used one rod for everything, and it was a spinning rod. And I threw swim baits, I threw Senkos, jigs, jerk baits, topwater. Doesn't matter. So if you're just starting out and you have one rod, yes, you can use it for a multitude of things. But will it be the most effective? And the answer is no. So yes, you can throw any lure on any rod, but by picking the correct rod, it will increase the effectiveness of the bait. So if you're confused about this, the first thing I would do is look at the info on the rod blank just above the reel seat. This is an Abu Garcia Veritas rod. I just got this. I wanted a workhorse bait caster that I could do a variety of things with. This particular rod is a 7'3" medium heavy, and it's recommended for a 1/4 to 1 ounce lure in 12 to 20 pound test. So if you think about 1/4 to 1 ounce lure weight, that's a pretty wide range. And 12 to 20 pound line, I'd say, is also a pretty heavy line. So I plan on using this rod for a lot of different things, but if I was confused on this subject, the first thing I would do is consult this information right here on the rod blank to get an idea of what lures and what line sizes it can handle. The next thing I would tell somebody that has this question is, how does it feel? This is honestly the most important thing. How does the lure feel when you use it with that rod? So here in New England, one of my favorite baits to throw all year is a hair jig. When I first started throwing hair jigs years ago, I would try to throw them on bait casters because I thought they were jigs and I thought that was what you needed to do. But then I found that I couldn't cast it very far, I couldn't feel it on the bottom. It just didn't feel right. And if that's the case for you, if you're throwing a bait and it just doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. If somebody tells you that you should be throwing a bait on a bait caster, but you're throwing it on a spinning rod and it feels right and you're catching fish, I would keep doing that. It doesn't matter what people say. If it feels right to you and it's working to you, I would recommend to keep doing it. So rod information and comfortability aside, there's a few scenarios where I think selecting either a bait caster or a spinning rod correctly can really increase the effectiveness of your presentations. I've come up with a few definitions for each. So bait casters should be used when the force generated by a strike is significant, or the lure and or fish requires significant force to be maneuvered. Let me elaborate. So there's a lot of baits where you are actively retrieving. You are reeling them in, you're jerking them around. So if you think about these lures like a lipless crankbait, a spinnerbait, chatterbaits, certain swim baits that are being actively retrieved quickly, those baits already have a significant amount of force on the line due to the method that you're retrieving them. You're reeling them in quickly. So compile that fast retrieve on top of a 3 to 4 pound bass eating it, and you're gonna generate a significant amount of force. That's when you're gonna need a bait caster. These things can handle more force than spinning rods. The other scenario is for baits that are thrown into heavy cover or need to be retrieved quickly. And the main two baits I think of for this scenario are jigs and frogs. A bait casting rod is going to allow you to pull the fish out of the cover faster, as well as retrieve the bait faster. All in all, just get it out faster before it can break you off. A lot of these lures also require a quick jerk of the rod tip in order to kind of straighten them out, like a spinnerbait. And bait casting rods have a stronger tip generally, so if you need a strong tip, if you need a quick twitch of a lure, bait casting is the way to go. And one last general guideline for bait casting rods is heavier lures. Now let's talk about spinning rods. This particular spinning rod is recommended for 1/8 to 1/2 ounce lures, very light. And also 6 to 14 pound test, very light. So let's go back to my hair jig example. Once I started throwing those 3/16 ounce hair jigs on spinning tackle, I could feel the bottom, I could feel every single little bite. Even though the fish I were catching were big, heavy smallmouth that I could have winched in with a bait caster, I couldn't adequately present the hair jig until I picked up a spinning rod. So when do you use a spinning rod? You use a spinning rod when the intended action of the bait is applied with mostly the rod tip, or the retrieval of the bait occurs mostly slowly along the bottom. Let's talk about that. So there are a lot of soft plastics whose action solely relies on the rod tip. And there's a lot of soft plastics and presentations that need to be dragged across the bottom very slowly. We've got weightless Senkos, we've got shaky heads, we've got Nico rigs, we've got drop shop hair jig. All of these things require very subtle light actions and rely on that rod tip to create the action of the bait. They're also all pretty light, and spinning rods are going to allow you to more easily maneuver light baits as well as feel the strikes on light baits. So again, another kind of loose guideline: heavy lures, bait caster; light lures, spinning rod, in addition to those other things that I talked about. There are a few scenarios where you can use either rod. Let's talk about a swim bait, for example. So if I'm power fishing a swim bait around grass, I'm going to throw that on a bait caster, because one, I'm going to be steadily retrieving it in order to keep it above the grass, and also if a fish takes it and goes into the grass, I want to be able to pull them out with that more force. But if it's winter and I'm fishing on the bottom and I want to fish very slowly, I'm going to fish with a spinning rod, and I'm just going to give it a few cranks, and I'm gonna creep that swim bait along the bottom with this and feel every bump and every strike. There's plenty of scenarios like that where you can choose either rod, and my guidelines by no means are a requirement. The most important thing in regards to this topic is your comfortability with the rod and bait, but choosing bait casting or spinning correctly will change the effectiveness of your lure. So I hope that tip helps you guys. Leave a comment if you have any more questions and I'll try to answer them. And if not, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.